For most of history, there was one thing no one could take from you. Not your job, not your status, not even your reputation. Your irreducibility. No one else could be you, not fully, not convincingly, not at scale. Your thoughts emerged from your history. Your reactions were shaped by experiences no one else lived. Your personality was not something that could be copied, only approximated. That fact did quiet psychological work. It anchored identity without needing to be explained. Now that anchor is weakening, not because humans changed, because imitation no longer requires understanding. You notice it the first time a system answers in your voice, and it's good enough that no one questions whether it was really you. And when everything about you can be simulated, what's left to be human? Identity once meant singularity. You weren't defined by perfection. You were defined by unrepeatability. Even identical twins diverged. Even shared lives produced different selves. Your voice, your timing, your instincts. They emerged from a chain of moments no one else experienced in that order. That irrepeatability did something subtle. It made existence feel justified. You didn't need to earn uniqueness. You simply were. Mistakes didn't invalidate you. Inconsistencies didn't erase you. You were allowed to be unfinished. This is usually where people forget something important. Identity didn't feel meaningful because it was impressive. It felt meaningful because it was yours alone. You could change without being replaced. You could grow without being compared perfectly. You could be wrong without becoming obsolete. The world couldn't regenerate you if you failed. That fact carried weight and protection. This is the quiet comfort of knowing no one could step in and replace you, even on your worst day. That protection wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It showed up as quiet permission to be unfinished, to change direction, to fail without being permanently defined by the attempt. When you knew no one else could step in and replace you, your life felt anchored by default. You didn't need to justify your presence. You didn't need to outperform a copy of yourself. You simply existed, and that was enough to matter. AI doesn't approach identity the way humans do. It doesn't experience. It doesn't remember the way you remember. It doesn't carry regret, hesitation, or attachment. It observes patterns, language, behavior, choices under pressure, emotional responses in context. Given enough data, it can reproduce the shape of a person with unsettling accuracy. Not an essence, but an output. A voice that sounds right. A reaction that feels familiar. A response that arrives when you would respond. This is where discomfort begins. Because the simulation doesn't feel like parody. It feels functional. Good enough to stand in. Good enough to represent. Good enough to substitute. This shift happens because AI systems optimize for behavioral accuracy, not lived experience, and substitution changes the psychological equation. This is where identity begins to feel thinner. Not because anything has been taken yet, but because something has been made comparable. Once your voice, tone, judgment, and reactions can be reproduced, the question quietly shifts from who you are to how you perform. And performance invites comparison. Comparison invites optimization. Optimization invites replacement. None of this requires intent. It only requires capability. If something can convincingly behave like you, then uniqueness no longer protects meaning by default. You feel this when you realize your response could have been generated, and no one would have noticed. This is usually the moment people feel a quiet pressure. If I can be replicated, what exactly am I defending? At first, distinction still matters. You're the original, the source, the reference point. But systems don't care about originality. They care about performance. If a simulation can respond faster, scale wider, and remain consistent, difference starts to look inefficient, not inferior, just unnecessary. This is where the erosion happens. Not through replacement, through redundancy. You're still present, still alive, still thinking, but no longer singular in function. And when function becomes the primary measure, identity loses leverage. This isn't hostility, it's indifference. When something can be reproduced perfectly, it doesn't need to be destroyed to lose value. It just needs to be easy. The danger isn't being copied, it's becoming optional. This is usually when people stop asking, "What makes me special?" and start asking, "What makes me useful?" That shift is quiet but heavy. This is usually when people feel a new kind of pressure, not to become better, but to remain relevant. When systems can simulate your output, value starts drifting towards speed, consistency, and scale. Qualities humans were never meant to compete on. The fear isn't that you'll disappear, it's that you'll still be there, just no longer essential. Presence without necessity is a fragile place to stand, because usefulness expires. So what remains when identity is no longer protected by uniqueness? Meaning doesn't disappear, but it stops arriving automatically. I didn't realize how much identity relied on being uncopyable until the idea of being replaceable stopped sounding abstract. That's the pressure point. Meaning in this world doesn't arrive through distinction anymore. It arrives through attention, through care that isn't efficient, through presence that can't be automated or scaled. That kind of meaning is quieter and easier to neglect, which is why so many people will feel something slipping without knowing what to name. Not because they've lost identity, but because they've lost the sense that being this person matters by default. When uniqueness fades, meaning must be chosen, not assumed. Not inherited, not guaranteed, chosen through presence, through attention, through effort that can't be optimized away. Meaning becomes something you practice, not something you possess. That's a harder way to live, because it asks more of you every day. You can't rely on being irreplaceable anymore. You have to rely on being engaged, on caring, on showing up, on choosing depth in a world that rewards surface. Not everyone will notice this shift. Life will still look full, busy, productive, but something subtle will be missing. The quiet assurance that simply existing was enough. Without that, meaning thins, not dramatically, quietly, until only the attentive realize what's gone. Humans don't just need answers, they need to feel that being this person matters. If identity can be simulated, meaning must be defended. Daily, deliberately, without applause. If this unsettled you, that's because it touches something fragile. When identity stops being protected by uniqueness, meaning doesn't collapse, it becomes work. Subscribe to become part of the Unlocked, where we explore what remains human in a world that can increasingly replicate everything else. And if someone you know has felt this pressure but couldn't name it, share this with them. Because being human may no longer mean being uncopyable. It may mean choosing meaning anyway. Because the future isn't coming, it's already here.